Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Helen Milner. I'm the Group Chief Executive at Good Things Foundation, and welcome to this episode of Digital Futures for Good, where we're going to be showing some clips from a conversation I had with Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, and we're going to have some expert commentary from Dana Haidan from Virgin Media O2, and maybe with Theo Blackwell if he can find a way to come online and chat with us. Maybe try your phone, Theo, see if that works. So Dana, please do introduce yourself. You have a very big job at Virgin Media O2, and it's wonderful to be a partner with you.
And it's wonderful to be a partner with you all good things. It's been over 2 years now, and I don't think we would be where we are when it comes to our digital inclusion journey if it wasn't for this partnership. So to introduce myself, hello everybody, very excited to be here and looking forward to seeing the clips of Andy Burnham's and his sharing his plan for Greater Manchester's digital inclusion strategy for the coming years. I'm Chief Sustainability Officer at Virgin Media O2. My role spans different areas. Decarbonization of the business is a big focus for us, but the other big part of my role is our digital inclusion and data poverty strategy, which has been definitely evolving over the last few years. And we needed a good partner to help guide us in that journey because it's a very complicated definitely area to get involved in the UK at the moment, where there's a lot of need, and yet things are not where they need to be. And so really excited to share with you today kind of our thoughts on what we think the government should do, what we think the role of local communities is, and also the role of business. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here. And Theo, if you can log on, turn it on and off again, and join us, then just come in and say hi. I'm going to assume that you're not able to say hi until you do. So let's go to our first clip from the conversation with Andy Burnham. So I recorded this a couple of weeks ago on a sunny day in Manchester, and this was before the general election was announced.
If you're to be a true digital city region, you've got to be a place where everybody's connected, everybody's online, everybody's supported to be in the conversation. It was really the pandemic that kind of brought it over to me, where I saw life moving online. I thought, well, hang on a minute, there's a lot of our residents that will be out of this conversation if we don't do something. You know, I saw the kids crowded outside McDonald's and doing their homework there, and it really came through to me that we need to think of digital connectivity as the fourth utility. It's an essential, not a desirable. Otherwise, if you see it as a desirable, some of our fellow citizens sadly will be shut out from the conversation and disconnected from opportunity.
That's fantastic. So a little teaser there to start with. So Dana, Andy Burnham there mentioned the pandemic, and I think that's when we first started working together, was when we saw that need in the pandemic. And I think for us at Good Things Foundation, before the pandemic, we're very much focused, working with thousands of community centres right across the UK in skills, helping people with those basic digital skills. And when the doors closed for the first time, it just became so stark, the need of so many people who didn't have data and devices. And I know you as a business, you really wanted to help out.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was, the moment in history that made us realize there are so many parts of our system that are so broken that needed to be addressed. And digital inclusion was definitely one of them. And sometimes now we're looking back, I honestly think, I don't know why it took a pandemic for us to realize that at a national level, but here we are. And so from our perspective, the question became, as a connectivity provider, it is no longer nice to have to do sort of nice digital inclusion initiatives and programs that are centered in digital skills. All of these used to be nice to have before the pandemic, I would say. Not anymore. At this point, I think it's an obligation for someone like us who's a connectivity provider and a technology company And that's why we've been really hyper-focused, not only on the program side of things, which we do many of it, but also on finding the right voices within government, within academia, within civil society that will help us make this more of a priority in the industry, but also at a national level. And hence, kind of working with good things. That's definitely been our number one focus, and we've been very vocal as a business as to what we want to see from government. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later today. So for us, it became a question of access, and so looking at those segments within our society that are excluded and understanding why they're excluded. And then it became a question of affordability. And so affordability became very clearly one of the key reasons why people are excluded. And so that from our perspective, at least initially, we thought it's something we can solve pretty easily as a business, but it turns out to be a lot more complicated than that. However, affordability became a big focus as well. And then third, skills. And that includes and we look at skills through not only just the know-how of using tech, but also the confidence and the trust in the technology to feel safe online and to be able to use it without worrying about your privacy and other issues online that are continuing to emerge. And so that's our approach has been sort of evolving over the last few years to look at access, affordability, and skills. Then, I think over the last year, another dimension became clear to us that it needs to be a priority, which is devices, which of course it's part of access in a way. However, devices need a particular, I think, way of looking at how do we create a system where people can access them in an affordable but also in an equitable way. So definitely what Andy kind of mentioned there around making sure that everybody is connected and it's a basic right for everyone. This is a fundamental. I think it needs to be at the core, a core belief for any business working in connectivity and tech, but also a core belief for government. Because I mean, I'm sure we're going to get to it later, but it is at this point not just an issue of social justice anymore. It's an economic imperative.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see Theo is with us and you're on mute, Theo. Can you just see if your audio is working now? I saw you unmute yourself. Are you talking? Maybe. Can't hear you. No. So sorry about that. Firewalls keep us safe, but also keep us excluded. Your own personal digital exclusion here, Theo. Let's go to the next clip because there's so many different aspects for us to cover today. So let's go to our next clip.
The way I see it is Greater Manchester is very much creating blueprints for things in terms of, you know, we're showing how devolution can fix something that's been a bit broken. So we're doing that with public transport, where we've been the first to put buses back under public control, but we're supporting Liverpool and Leeds who are heading in a similar direction. But we want to do it on other things as well. And we do want to take more control of post-16 technical education. And that's a big reform that's coming as well. We did negotiate with the current government a Trailblazer devolution deal that gives us a funding arrangement from next year that is more akin to Wales or Scotland, where we have a kind of a single budget, a block, and we've got then more flexibility to use it differently rather than it being tied up in the red tape of all the different Whitehall silos. So there's a lot of change coming actually, and I think, you know, I feel the responsibility to use it well. You know, we're going to have a huge drive in this mayoral term on creating an alternative to the university route for our young people. The Greater Manchester Baccalaureate is a big priority for us, giving every young person growing up here a path to the opportunity in the Greater Manchester economy. Another parallel drive on housing, where we're sort of kind of drawing a line really on the days where landlords have rented out homes that are unfit and unsafe for habitation. We're just saying that just shouldn't happen anymore. We need a very different housing sector. We need to build more social homes. And actually, from the work we've done through the Digital Inclusion Task Force, make sure that those homes are properly set up with everything that people need. So big themes are coming, but I think in terms of what more, it would be that missing piece around the benefit system, because that is a big barrier for a lot of our residents in terms of moving forward. It would be more control over housing, but I think it also would be more discretionary funding to put in place the infrastructure that we need, be it transport infrastructure or digital infrastructure. I'm actually quite optimistic about where things are going in the next 25 years. You know, in really tough times for the country, devolution has shone like a bright light, hasn't it? Here in Greater Manchester, but in other places as well. And I think the time may well come where we could start to say, for instance, to the M62 mayors, myself, Tracy in Leeds, Steve in Liverpool, a digital inclusion strategy that goes right across that corridor to mirror the public transport strategy that we're already working on together.
As a proud Sheffield-based charity, I would like to put South Yorkshire in his well, obviously it's not the M69, but on his east to west northern group of combined authorities. And it's a shame that Theo can't speak to us and be part of this, because Theo's the Chief Digital Officer at the Greater London Authority, and has I think that, you know, Andy Burnham talking about blueprints for city regions is obviously the work that Theo has spearheaded in Greater London for the Get Online London is also a real absolute trailblazer for using that devolution and pooling, bringing that money together that they were spending on thousands and hundreds of smaller projects, and bringing it together for one combined project, including grants back out to community organisations, is so important. I think one of the big things, Dana, that Andy was focusing on there is around how digital inclusion isn't a silo on its own. It's actually a cross-cutting policy area. And I think that it's fantastic to have a mayor like Andy Burnham and like Sadiq Khan in London as well, who absolutely understands that this is not just in the technology box. Actually, this is helping them to deliver education, is helping them to deliver housing. That in your experience, is that the way that you've been thinking about digital inclusion from a kind of a policy, you know, facing to Whitehall or facing to a city region?
Absolutely. And that's why when he kind of mentioned that, first of all, I mean, I have to kind of recognize Andy Burnham's leadership when it comes to digital inclusion. That's very rare to see from what I've seen around the UK. There are very few regions that have kind of really spearheaded the digital inclusion revolution within their regions in the way Andy has done. And so, yeah, so I'm not surprised that he views it in this way, to be honest, from working with the digital inclusion team in Greater Manchester Combined Authority over the last couple of years. But for us, that is precisely why we think it's a fundamental right, because we have seen over and over again that digital exclusion is the one factor that makes other social issues much, much worse. And so I mean, there's a recent report that was published by the Center of Social Justice that focused on the poverty premium, for instance. And in that report, they essentially say or state that people who are digitally excluded tend to pay for products and services 25% more than they would have if they bought those online. And that's just a basic example of how it, just because of the lack of access, it's literally means somebody will be able to afford the next meal or not. It goes down to that level. But similarly, I mean, it's across everything. I mean, any person who tried to sign up for a GP would know that you cannot access a lot of services now if you don't have connectivity. He mentioned education as another one. I mean, continuously we're seeing education more and more move online. A lot of universities, because of so many challenges, they're not able to kind of have students coming from abroad to study here, so they rely heavily on online courses and online education. How is that going to work if we don't have the right structure in the UK to make sure that anybody across the UK can access the education that they need? So even from a financial inclusion perspective, similarly, I mean, we've partnered with Virgin Money, as you know, to turn essentially all their stores into data hubs. And that was the first time for us where we kind of experimented with the connection between financial exclusion and digital exclusion. And it has become, over the last, I think I would say 5-6 years, more and more clear that financial inclusion and digital inclusion are very much connected, especially in a country that's going increasingly cashless. We're seeing banks close their branches everywhere across the UK. We're seeing people struggling to access cash. However, digital payments have benefits in many ways that can enable people to keep their money safe, to manage their finances better. And it has its own benefits, but at the same time, that can only work if we have the right digital access and the digital rights for people. And so definitely this is a fundamental belief of ours that it is the one factor that when introduced, it really improves people's quality of life. We've partnered with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and I saw Andy mention housing, to trial last year, essentially introducing connectivity in a number of social housing projects in the Greater Manchester area. And the results that came out of that pilot were quite powerful, because they kind of highlighted how, because obviously within, sometimes depending on the region, you would have certain social issues that need to be tackled within social housing estates that are difficult to tackle because of the cost of living crisis. However, when we introduced connectivity in those free connectivity in those social housing projects, there were a number of things that have improved people's access to employment opportunities, people access to services, and even universal credit, and their ability to apply. And so it's just the results of that pilot were quite incredible, to show that connectivity can be an intervention that can really unlock and solve many social issues.
Yeah, and I think that those pilots as well were a real tour de force around collaboration between the combined authority, so between the local government, the businesses, the social housing providers, which are not-for-profits, as well as the community sector in those local areas to provide people with that additional support. So it's a real tour de force in that collaborative approach.
And the industry really came together for that particular pilot, which is great to see, because sometimes we hear in this space that, the telcos don't really collaborate much when it comes to tackling digital inclusion. But with the leadership of Greater Manchester Combined Authority that brought us all together, they created the perfect platform and the right platform for us to be able to collaborate in an easy way, but also in a way where we're complementing each other in many ways and what we bring to the table. And so the industry is definitely willing to collaborate. It's just obviously it's difficult to do that without government leadership, I would say.
Yeah, and leadership is something that's come through very strongly across Digital Futures for Good, actually, from all the different sectors. So Thea, let's see if you can hear us. I feel a little bit like Eurovision. I mean, not Eurovision. Yeah. Theo, can you? Well, you can hear us, I know, but can you speak? Is your audio working? So frustrating. You must be so frustrated. And I think you also might have been turning it on and off again when I was telling everybody about all the amazing work that you're doing in London on Get London Online. And Dana, you might see in the chat panel that the people here in the audience who were actually one of the pilot housing providers in that partner, and they're saying what a great partner you were, which is fantastic. So let's go to the next clip, because I think there's something interesting here about the difference between a Whitehall government and a city region government. Emma Reevy, who was on the last episode, who's the chief executive of the Trussell Trust, told me that 1 in 6 of people visiting a Trussell Trust food bank is also digitally excluded.
Yeah.
So that just shows that the overlapping need, but then the opportunity to then make sure that you're providing that support whilst at the same time of supporting with food poverty, helping with digital inclusion.
So this is why in this mayoral term, I'm going to make a big pitch to the government to take more devolved control of the benefit system. Personally, I think if it was more localised and personalised, the support we give to people, I think we would succeed in connecting more people to training, more people to opportunity, and we get more people into work. You know, to have people marginalised in that way who are kind of having to close down their digital connectivity because they just can't afford it. It's not actually moving them towards work, is it? So we think, you know, you've got to rethink things really and start to create the foundations for a really productive economy. And a really productive economy, I would say, is where everybody's online. I mean, you just won't get there. You won't get the numbers of people into work if you're forcing people, if you like, to live without the basics.
Definitely, absolutely. I mean, obviously we think the digital divide should be fixed, and as you saw on my sandwich board, £13.7 billion. So it's not just a social issue, it's not just a equality of opportunity, it's a real economic issue as well.
Oh, there's massive returns that come on that investment. And I just think the moment might come actually where, you know, we can make a big shift. I thought it was coming straight after the pandemic, and that's why I set up the Digital Inclusion Action Network. I wanted to serve up to Whitehall a sort of template for, you know, the place that is prepared to go first and become a sort of, you know, true digital city region in every respect. And I was kind of left waiting a little bit, and the funding never came. But I still think the ambition is absolutely there. The business case for doing it, I think, could be demonstrated. Savings to public services, as I say, educational attainment higher, but also more people involved in sort of constructive volunteering or better still work.
Just talking about the experience of the current system, I was talking to a man in Stockport about a year or so ago, and he told me that system left him feeling like he was at the deep pit of despair. And actually it was only coming to a local digital inclusion hub in Stockport and getting that really personalised support, obviously around using the internet, getting free connectivity, getting the skills he needed to apply for work. But because it wasn't about applying for work, it was about him and what he needed. He actually felt that, he said that now he felt that he was emotionally and psychologically ready to look for work and to get a job. So, you know, that you're absolutely right, making sure that wraparound support and service is there. And it's just a shame at the moment that the investment goes, as you said, to the conditionality of that benefit system. And then you've got the charities in places like Stockport and all over Greater Manchester, all over the country, actually picking up those pieces and providing that safety net to turn that.
It's the difference between
playing for me.
Okay.
Shall I go back to it?
Yeah.
Let's go back. Sorry. Just checking you can all see that.
Yes.
Yeah. Around using the internet, getting free connectivity, getting the skills he needed to apply for work. But because it wasn't about applying for work, it was about him and what he needed. He actually felt that, he said that now he felt that he was emotionally and psychologically ready to look for work and to get a job. So, you know, that you're absolutely right, making sure that wraparound support and service is there. And it's just a shame at the moment that the investment goes, as you said, to the conditionality of that benefit system. And then you've got the charities in places like Stockport and all over Greater Manchester, all over the country, actually picking up those pieces and providing that safety net to turn that around.
It's the difference between what Westminster and Whitehall does, and I was there, so I know it, between a system that thinks top down and thinks in terms of, I don't know, sometimes messages for certain media outlets, and that often leads to a sort of quite, I don't know, a kind of a rhetoric that doesn't really match the real world. So the difference between that or working the way that I do, which is bottom up with people, with our communities, and actually you realise if the goal is more people into work, you would have exactly the system that you described, which is more empowering, more enabling, helping people along a journey towards that, giving them the digital connectivity if that's one of the things that they're missing. That's exactly the way to do it.
So I think Andy Burnham there's making a pitch to run the benefit system for Greater Manchester as part of his
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
It's great to see that his ambition for greater and deeper devolution is fantastic. That I think one thing that is really interesting, because obviously Andy Burnham's talking about it as a mayor, as a leader of a city region, but actually a lot of what he's saying is incredibly relevant to communities as well, and so that we know that reaching people where they are and then providing them the support where they are. And I think it goes back to what we were saying about making sure that the policy development isn't in a silo. This is also about wraparounds for individuals and for humans as well. And Dana, I think you've been out and seen some of the digital inclusion hubs. It's like why do you think that community approach is so important?
Absolutely crucial, and it's interesting to hear Andy's views on the benefit system being decentralized, which makes perfect sense to me, seeing how really grassroots efforts are what's driving digital inclusion in so many parts of the UK. In the absence of a national strategy and a national direction, the local communities are really lifting that heavy weight of tackling that in very hyper local ways. And with some of the digital hubs that I've visited, they're not just digital hubs, they're community centers in their own right. They're helping so many people who are excluded in so many ways, with the common factor being that they are digitally excluded, and connectivity is the one intervention that's going to help them improve many aspects of the situation that they're in that moment in time. Not that it's a silver bullet, of course it isn't, but it just helps in a very difficult, challenging season of their life to connect them with the services that they need, with the support that they need. And the digital hubs have been the ones that I've seen, as I said, they are an integral part of the community. They understand very deeply the needs of the community. They understand exactly what solutions would work and what solutions wouldn't work. To give you an example, we've been focused on connecting community centres around the UK with free broadband. And in some cases, they told us actually broadband is not the issue. Would like some Wi-Fi connectivity and would like it to be accessible and portable if possible, because that works better for our needs. And especially when they tackle things like emergency response, for instance. And so sometimes businesses and government address issues with a cookie cutter approach, and we think we know what the communities need, and we think we have all the solutions, even with all the needs assessment exercises that we do and the endless reports and research, until we actually let the communities be the ones who lead on that change. I think it's going to be very difficult to make sure that the approach is fit for purpose. But I don't think as well the weight needs to be fully on the local communities, because that's where we are now. I think that's going to make it very difficult for us to make progress, and there needs to be support at a national level in some shape or form. Of course, in the case of benefits, now they're centralized, and I see Andy's point around decentralizing that system to give the regions the power to make sure that it's fit for purpose for their needs. But in some cases, like with digital inclusion, a centralized national inclusion strategy is absolutely key to make sure that everyone or the key issues are being prioritized at a national level, and these are cascaded down then to the regions to combined kind of a national and a grassroots effort. I think that's the perfect balance that we need to get to.
Yeah, I think, do you remember that old environmental slogan, think global, act local? It's
Yeah, yeah,
about having a national strategy, or Andy
yeah.
talks himself about a blueprint, you know, that he's very much leading and showing real personal leadership in Greater Manchester. In London, the same thing, a real commitment. But so having to have that leadership, have that blueprint, have that strategy, but then understanding at each hyper-local level that it is that community and those organisations who understand those people. The other thing that we did actually get from Andy there, I mentioned my sandwich board. So if people haven't seen it, at the party conferences last autumn, I had a sandwich board on, and at the beginning of the conversation with Andy for Digital Futures for Good, I was wearing it, and it basically says there's £13.7 billion back to the economy if we fix the digital divide.
And in the last House of Lords report, they were talking about the cost of digital exclusion. And so they're estimating it to be 67 billion
Yeah, that's right. And so
pounds. That's why I don't think it's a social justice issue. It's an economics issue, in my view.
yeah, and I love the fact that Andy Burnham is saying the business case is there, and that actually the rewards that you get far outstrip the cost of doing it. Obviously within a very tight fiscal environment, it's difficult to invest now for those benefits for the future, but actually having our leaders understand that the business case is there and is real. And I know there's lots of people here today who are from councils and local authorities, so actually knowing that, you know, there's some strong voices within the local government area who are saying clearly the business case is there is so important. That and I think I think it's interesting. Andy's obviously speaking as a city region mayor, so he obviously thinks his bottom-up model is right. But I think you're absolutely right that kind of national leadership would be great to have from the next government. So let's go to the next clip where I think Andy's going to talk a bit about collaborating with businesses. And those businesses that you're growing in Greater Manchester, you're not going to fix the digital divide in Greater Manchester or achieve tremendous growth by yourself. So what is the role? I mean, we're sponsored today by Vodafone. You know, what's the opportunities for businesses and what's their responsibility to help fixing that digital divide?
I think I would say to the industry, work more collaboratively. I think I personally look at the 21st century economy, and it's true of the sort of green economy, the digital economy. The success lies in collaboration, not in old school, slightly competitive, doing everything on. You know, I think we need to sort of open up to different ways of working. For instance, if we were to sort of have a true digital inclusion strategy for Greater Manchester, there would be no black spots, would there, anywhere in our city region? And yet there are, and there shouldn't be. You know, I see it with my own mobile phone. We can drive through Greater Manchester and your phone call can drop out 2 or 3 times in the middle of a phone call. So, you know, why? Why aren't we having a sort of more coherent approach to these things where, you know, the Wi-Fi connectivity is in equal everywhere? And I think there are some issues there for industry to address and, you know, work more collaboratively on, I think. So I don't know, is that a challenge? Is that a fair challenge?
I think so. I think the word is collaboration. So, I mean, obviously in Greater Manchester, you've got over 200 data banks, right? So you've got amazing charities and voluntary organisations working as digital inclusion hubs, providing the skills, helping people with confidence and motivation, people who can't afford devices and connectivity, giving that to them as well. but we can't do any of this on our own. So we can't do it as a charity by ourselves. Business can't do it by
Yeah.
themselves, and you can't do it by yourself.
I think we're doing it via sort of a slightly piecemeal approach, aren't we? Where there's bits and bobs here and there, and there's good projects here and there. I do just think it maybe requires industry as one to come to us and say, right, this is everything that we can put into this, and then we could, as one city region, say, okay, and this is everything that we feel we have got with our single settlement with Whitehall. So can between us we then help everybody online. But I think our job would get easier if that DWP piece came in, because that's critical funding, isn't it? That is about supporting people to find opportunity and find work. And if people haven't got home connectivity, how honestly are they going to do that? So it implies change at the Greater Manchester level. I think it implies change at the UK government level and at an industry level. But I think we need to start talking in those terms. We've done brilliant things together. And I keep saying, we are grateful to the Good Things Foundation, but it has to become sort of mainstream, doesn't it?
Yeah, mainstream. I think Dana, that collaboration, and I mean, you've spoken about it already about the social housing pilots, but when Virgin Media O2, when you worked with us at Good Things to bring the National Data Bank, and then invited others in across the industry to be part of it, I think it was. It's not normal, is it? I mean, although absolutely good common sense, it's not a typical way of behaving from business.
Yeah, that's why I take his challenge. I really do, around collaboration. But I also think the cases where industry collaborated really well or collaborates really well are the cases where the government played the key role in bringing businesses together. So, I mean, just a question of connectivity and infrastructure and access. For example, Shared Rural Network as a project that is led by government. Government brought us all together in order to address it as an industry. And they really have been the platform that's keeping us to account as to how we will work together to make sure rural parts of the UK are connected. And we have been all progressing over the last couple of years with kind of meeting our targets around how many sites we're connecting as part of that project. So, and that's, for me, is one of the kind of really most powerful examples in the industry as to how we can come together if we have the right environment from a regulatory perspective that enables that. From a kind of the National Data Bank, for us, and also we have, I mean, not only on the digital inclusion side of things, there are some issues that we as VMO2 believe we cannot solve them on our own. It's just not going to happen. Or recycling or e-waste recycling is another one. I mean, to give you an example, O2 Recycle, which is our recycling scheme for handsets, it's completely network agnostic, and we've made the decision long time ago that we're going to accept any phones to be given to us for recycling, and we're going to pay money for them, for people to give us their phones. And we made that decision because it was very clear we're not going to tackle e-waste by just taking back the phones that we've sold. And similarly with the data poverty, we know that we alone we cannot reach all the digitally excluded people in the UK, and we're going to have to collaborate with the industry and also people from outside of our industry who can bring in kind of a really unique expertise and know-how. So definitely, while I take his challenge, I also do think government plays a huge role in bringing the industry together when it really matters, especially around infrastructure issues and network challenges in some parts of the UK, but also around things like social tariffs access. And I talk quite a bit about that from a kind of a fiscal policy perspective. The fact that social tariffs are now taxed at 20%, it makes it really difficult for the industry to really prioritize pushing the social tariffs and communicating them and evolving them and making sure they're fit for purpose. And we've been really calling out the government to address this issue for some time now. And I know this is one of your as well key policy asks as from your side, Helen. So yeah, so while I take the challenge, I really definitely think the most successful cases in the industry coming together and playing kind of a key collaborative role to address an issue, it's when the government really steps in as that unifying or convening power.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that there's a couple of questions in the chat panel around headline insights coming from political parties about post-election initiatives of digital inclusion, and one about, given the manifestos are out, does digital divide feature? So that one thing that we've been very vocal and consistent, I mean, you mentioned the social tariffs and VAT, the Dana, but also about just government employs a lot of people. So they've got a lot of tech that they could donate to the National Device Bank and get back out through Good Things Foundation, the National Digital Inclusion Network, back out and into the hands of excluded people who need them. So they're two of the things we've been asking for. At the headline level, we would like an action plan, you know, back to that strategy point that you raised, Dana, that Andy Burnham raised, you know, actually asking for that. And one of the team might put in the chat panel a link to our policy ask for manifestos. The Labour manifesto is out on Thursday, so fingers crossed that there's some good news coming from the Labour Party manifesto on digital inclusion. And obviously, as Andy Burnham's saying, that he and also Sadiq Khan in London have been very much saying that they've been trailblazing and being showing how important, how necessary, how essential digital inclusion is for them as well. So the last question I always ask all of my guests when I interview them for Digital Futures for Good is, if they were made Prime Minister, what would they do in their first 100 days to fix the digital divide? So let's hear what Andy Burnham said.
So imagine that you became the Prime Minister in Westminster, and what would you be doing in your first 100 days to fix the digital divide in all of its gamut?
Well, I'd be obviously taking the Greater Manchester plan and the Greater Manchester vision in. I think it's about a vision for the country first, though, isn't it? In terms of, you know, what should be the right of every citizen. I think you've got to start there. You know, I've been in this role now 7 years, and what I observe is the basics of life, and this might be difficult for some to hear in the industry, but the basics of life were basically broken up and sold off. Now, in the telecoms world, you can argue there was more logic in that because, you know, it's created a very competitive industry. But if I look at the water world, well, has that improved the service to our residents and lowered their bills? Well, no. In energy, has it done that? No. Did it do it in public transport? Definitely not. Deregulation led to the opposite. The way I look at it is you won't succeed as a country if your individual citizens are not set up to succeed. It's why I've adopted the housing first philosophy from Finland. You know, you can't have anything in life without a good home. Yeah. By a good home, I would say a good home in terms of its physical condition, a secure home in terms of your tenancy, but now it's got to be a connected home, hasn't it? To you know, everything around you and the opportunity. You've got to have, I think, electricity and energy you can afford, as opposed to sort of be choosing between eating and heating and you know, all of those type of discussions. You know, water systems that don't pollute your local streams and all of that. You know, I do honestly think we have to sort of rethink these things. And this is slightly political territory, but I'm a politician, and I'm if you like, well into my career now, and I just feel the need to say this. I think we took several wrong turns in the 1980s. The government I was in didn't correct it. You can't have millions of your fellow citizens living life without the foundations of the basics and not expect there to be problems. There will be issues, won't there? We won't be thriving as a country and as an economy. So you've asked me a question. I would personally move towards an approach that gives people the right to a good, secure home. You know, that therefore then has to be provided the right to food every day, so that there's no worry about that. And I applaud Sadiq with some of the things he's done in that space. The right to, you know, having warmth within your home, but also connectivity is a right. I would say you can't be what you can be, can you, unless you are connected to opportunity, and you know that implies to transport that connectivity piece as well as digital. So the way I see it, and this is my kind of final point, I think we're almost, the way we've run things, we've almost set people up to fail, and particularly through the way the benefit system interacts with this complex world. I would say come at it, you know, the learning from devolution is when you're working bottom up with your communities, you just look at life through a very different lens. And it's about making sure everyone's got the basics in place, and then you've got a foundation for them to succeed, and the whole economy and the whole country to succeed.
Right, isn't it? That I think we have a leader, don't we, in Andy Burnham, who understands why digital inclusion is important. He's put his own personal leadership behind it. He understands the business case, the economic case, but also there he's talking about the social case, is that absolutely digital inclusion is fundamental for a fair and just society. So it's absolutely fantastic to hear that, isn't it? So what did you think of Andy's first 100 days?
Very much aligned with what I would do, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to get into all the things I want to do to fix this world, so I'm just going to focus on digital inclusion for now. But definitely for me, I mean, he mentioned the word rights quite a bit, which is very much what I had in mind as well when you sent me this question, because I do feel in a country like the UK, where we are a world leader in many ways, I find it quite amazing that digital rights are not enshrined into law, and that would be one key focus for me if I'm a prime minister ever. I don't think it'll ever happen, but essentially, I mean, digital minimum living standards, which is work that you at Good Things have been leading on for the past at least couple of years. Now you're leading on it from a civil society and academia perspective, and working. I mean, in Wales, they're doing amazing work, kind of bringing it to life. The first thing, I mean, one of the first things I would do is making sure that that's enshrined in the law, that we have a national digital minimum living standard that is legally mandated, because as Andy mentioned, it is a right. It's literally the difference between somebody able to live a good quality of life or to have a very challenging life across the board. And then secondly, I definitely would make sure that the digital inclusion is part of the government structure. The fact that we don't have a secretary for digital inclusion, for example, doesn't make sense to me in today's world. And so that would be the first thing I would do. I would make sure that we hire for a kind of a digital inclusion secretary of state, and that will hopefully form a task force that will look into this issue and address it as a key challenge that needs to be addressed at a national level. So yeah, these are the two things I would start with, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we at Good Things are asking for a cross-government action plan that collaborates with businesses, civil society, and the public sector to fix the digital divide. That we've not talked that much about skills. I mean, Andy obviously talked about the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate, but you've mentioned about skills and trust and safety, and particularly in the age of AI. We've talked about the reuse of tech through the National Device Bank. The internet access making sure that we innovate and continue to innovate, like the National Data Bank, as you led at Virgin Media O2, but making sure that everyone can afford to get online. So obviously there's social tariffs, and there's a lot of work going on around affordability, but also for those people who can't afford it, it's free. So like the National Data Bank, but it could also be about removing or reducing VAT on social tariffs. But also the fifth and the final one for us in our manifesto is about government making sure all their frontline services are signposting to the National Digital Inclusion Network. So there's more than 5,000 hyper-local partners in this big club with the shared vision, all supporting people around digital inclusion, you know, be it, you know, skills or access through the free mobile connectivity or the free refurbished devices. So that is there. It is there as a resource. You know, these are community organizations who have, you know, as you said before, that their main focus is normally something else, and this has been embedded in, but it is there and it can be signposted to, and it can help to just that partnership at that local level. And I know that does happen really well in many cases, but actually from a top-down guidance point of view, I think that could happen more. And my colleagues have put a link to the to our manifesto in the chat panel. And as I said, we're looking forward to the so we haven't had a mention yet for digital inclusion so far in the manifestos, but more are coming out this week. So hopefully we can get some mentions and some leadership, some commitment from potential future governments through their manifestos and through their commitments as we move through the next few weeks, which will be absolutely amazing. So thank you everyone who's come today. Thank you for putting your comments in the chat panel. It's such a shame Theo Blackwell apologized for all of his tech issues. He couldn't even do it online. So digital inclusion at play of some kind, of a firewall nature. But Dana, thank you so much for being part of today's episode of Digital Futures for Good. It's been great having you with us. So the full video of my conversation with Andy Burnham will be published on the Good Things Foundation YouTube channel at some point after July the 4th, when the election results are out. So we can put that up then after that date. So that will be great. So thanks so much for coming, and hopefully you can have a look at that full conversation when it comes out. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dana. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.